Greetings, programs, and welcome to TKSax Talks Mechwarrior Online, Episode 4. Today, we're going to talk about things you can do with Mechwarrior Online to make you a better Mechwarrior Online player. And I'm not even going to talk about the meta per se. I'm not going to tell you what loadouts to build, but we are going to talk about things you can do both in the game client, with your builds, and your gameplay to make you a better player in Mechwarrior Online. So let's take a look. Alright, so let's take a look here in the game settings. There's a couple things you should turn off. But when you get the game, I generally leave arm lock off. I can toggle that with a setting in game. Turn off start in third person. I turn on throttle decay. That's on by default, so you can leave that. That's how your mech accelerates and decelerate. I like to play with throttle decay. I also remap my 100% throttle to be close to my W key, so I can just punch that to get to 100% throttle and not have to hold W to go everywhere. But when I'm fighting, I generally use W and S, and the throttle decay is much better for poking and peeking the way I play. I also turn off cockpit glass. This is more of my own personal preference. That one's completely up to you. The other one's a directional area. I actually played with this on for a while, just to really burn in where my legs were facing. So this is a good thing to leave on, but kind of once you get, once you get used to where your feet and your torso are, you can probably turn it off. Enable cockpit monitors. You can turn this off or on. It does help with FPS a little bit, so if you're struggling for frame rates, then you should turn this off. As far as the mouse settings, this is really important. Crank this down to between 0.1 and 0.3. It comes slid all the way over here to 1, so you want to change that almost immediately to somewhere between 0.1 and 0.3, and you can play with that setting. Also crank the acceleration down. I think it is also over here to 1, and the same thing with smooth. These things will slow down how your mouse reacts to your inputs and help with your aiming overall in game. And the last thing on this page that I would look at is turning on the colorblind reticle. This is kind of a personal preference thing, but I like how the colorblind reticle displays hits when you get a hit. It's a lot more visible, and I like having it on. All right, let's take a look at the video settings. This is another area that can help your gameplay. A lot of people will run these settings all on low. Really, the thing that you should really try to do is run these settings to where you can at least get around 50 frames per second. That makes a big difference in gameplay. My machine is an older machine. I generally get around, I average about 60 to 65 frames. If you're already getting 100 frames per second, it's probably not much you have to change here. Except I would look at this particles thing. The one thing about particle it will do is it actually can blind your sight on mechs because of the particles that come up when you shoot the ground or another mech or even weapons fire. So play with the particles setting and get it where you like it. I kind of like mine on medium. I actually really liked it better on low, but I like how it looks on medium. But kind of try to find a good balance between how it looks and so it's not blinding you. All right, now that we've looked at the different game settings, let's take a look in the mech bay. So here we have a Dragonslayer, how I used to run it back before I learned some of the tricks. Yes, obviously the Dragonslayer was a prime meta mech back in the day. But this is how I ran it. I ran it with 72 front armor. Of course, it wasn't even 72 now because we have armor quirks. But I used to run with 20 rear armor, and I actually used to double the center torso armor. Which really makes no sense in this build because it's running an XL, so if I lose my side torso, I'm dead. But really what I do now is I do this. Is I lower this back armor down to 5 or 6. And, I crank my front armor. They call this front loading the armor. You'll hear people say this. They'll front load their armor, and that's a big difference. I'm going to go from 97 in the center to almost 130. That's a huge difference. That's actually a couple salvos different. I can remember very vividly playing with this mech like that before and trading shots with people, and I knew I was getting the same amount of hits on them. They were getting the same amount of hits on me. I died before them simply because they had much more armor up front. The other thing I want to talk about here is what we call crit padding. Notice this mech has no empty slots anywhere. And I did that by doing Gauss ammo here at half tons. You only do this with Gauss ammo because it doesn't explode. Basically what happens here, the way the game works, if you don't have empty slots, it reduces the level that you'll get a critical roll on that thing, so you won't lose a weapon. And that's pretty important when you have a Gauss rifle here on your right arm, because that way, you won't get your Gauss crit as often. So definitely do armor padding. Try to fill up those slots as much as you can. especially if you're running Gauss. But there's other ways you can do. You can take heat seats out of the engine. So say you don't have, notice I'm missing 2 because I can't put any more here. But say, well, actually I didn't. I took 2 out of here and I put them over here to fill out all my critical slots. So that's another great trick to making your mech last a little longer. All right, so we're going to talk about torso twisting and how to use all the armor on your mech. As you can see, this mech has all of its weapons on the right side. This is called dead siding. The reason people do this is lots of reasons. The first thing you'll notice is I don't have all my armor in my left arm. Even though I don't have all my armor then, once this arm is blown off, there's this thing called damage transfer. Basically, if someone hits me where the left arm used to be, it takes away 50% of the damage that transfers into this left torso. And then once this left torso is destroyed, if this was not an XL or if this was a clan mech, same thing. It takes 50% off here before getting the center torso. I believe those numbers are right. I could be a little off on those numbers, but you basically have to burn through all that blown up components to kill somebody in the center torso. All right, I'm going to fire up the testing grounds here and talk about how I play a mech like this. And a lot of other mechs too, the idea of torso twisting. So basically on a mech like this, it has all of its weapons in one side. Every time I fire at the enemy, I'm going to fire and I'm going to turn away. And that way I'm going to stay turned until it's time to fire again, and then I turn away. And the reason you do that, you want to turn away from the enemy every time. That way you're making them burn through that armor. So you can see it a little bit more with this Jenner who's farther away. So you can see the reticle light up. So you don't need to look at the mech to know where you hit him. The other thing that helps you here is the R key. So when I light up the R key, I know he's in the center torso. That also helps you when you shoot him. So if I shoot here... Okay, I was thinking that was going to hit the center torso or the side torso, but it hit the center torso. So use the R key. I know people don't always use it, and I understand why, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But, the R key helps you when you're turning away because I know I hit him in the right rear torso. So like I said, every time I fire, I turn away from where the enemy is. And I stay turned away until it's ready to fire again. And I turn away. I wait for my weapons to charge up. And I turn away. And the more you can learn that skill, the better you will be at staying alive in Mechwarrior Online. So here's another dead-sided mech. This is a Hellbringer. 4 ER large lasers. I usually use this in CW. As you can see, I don't have a lot of armor in the arms. But as I said before, even though those arms get blown off, they still affect how damage transfers to your side torsos. And of course, being a clan mech, they won't die when the side torso pops. In a recent CW mech, I actually got this mech down to 11%. 11%, you can see how damaged it is. I basically burned all this off. In fact, interesting enough, my side torso did not go when I took this picture. So you can use your armor to all effect. I still could have lost the side torso right here and still had all of my weapons because all of my weapons in this mech are on my left side. And that's the other thing you got to be. Don't get used to twisting just one way. If you twist always to the left, when you have an important thing on the left, you're going to get that blown off. So keep in mind where your weapons are and use those dead sides of your torso, or either you twist both ways. If you have a mech that has balanced weapons, you need to balance how you're getting hit, left and right. All right, we're back in the testing grounds here. I'm in a Hunchback 2CA to be specific. And I know this mech has high mount. So when I do my battles here, if I'm doing long range, I'm only going to peek just enough to shoot that mech, right? I'm going to peek, and I'm going to shoot. I'm almost getting a full burn there. You also notice that when I start to accelerate back into the thing, or really what it's called is deceleration, I actually start decelerating before I'm all the way up. That way I get back quicker. I'm only showing the part that I need to show, right? And this even works if you're playing an LRM boat. You may want to shoot up here. All you need to do is get that reticle on there so you can keep locks. You're bombing missiles in here. Your team's around here. You're all doing the same thing. But maybe you start getting focus fire. You want to be able to back down into cover or hide behind this building here to make sure that you don't get killed, because staying alive is a big part of playing Mechwarrior Online. All right, I'm back here in the testing grounds, back in Crimson Strait with my Hunchback. We're going to talk about another tool here that's available to you. It's called the enemy spotted thing. So I'm going to choose enemy spotted here, and then I'm going to back away. So I don't have line of sight on him anymore.
And you can see on the minimap there in C5, that marker is still there. It stays there quite a long time. In fact, here's a video you'll see of me kind of murdering a locust on Alpine Peaks by using the enemy spotted to track him and line up his shot. So when he peeked over that hill, I blew him apart. Another good thing too, if you've got a mech with jump jets, you should only expose enough of your mech to get a fire, right? I actually exposed too much there, so just enough to get a clean shot. Right? Now I probably should have went a little higher there. So you want to play to your mech strength. And the other thing is we talked about pressing the R key, how it's important. Well, a lot of good players don't need to. So I'm going to shoot this guy here, and I twisted away. Wrong video. So I'm going to shoot him. And even if I didn't press the R key, I know I shot him in the center torso mostly. So the next time I see him, I don't need to press the R key. And that comes in handy if you're seeing a lot of mechs. I kind of always think like that catapult. So if I'm under a lot of fire and I just want to get shots at him, I'm just going to shoot. I don't really have time to press the R key. In fact, if I press the R key, you're not even going to get a readout. Oh, well, actually, I did there because I have target decay on this mech or something. But anyway, a lot of times you're not out in the open long enough to get a thing. So always remember where you shoot your mechs. I mean, every time I see a mech, it's like, okay, I shot a green Atlas in the left arm. I just catalog that in my brain so that when you run across these mechs again, you don't even have to see the R key. Sometimes you don't have time. Maybe there's a dual Gauss Jaeger mech, and you hit it in the left torso, and you know that, hey, guess what? Dual Gauss Jaeger mechs usually are XL, so I'm going to hit him in that left torso again, and maybe I can kill him. And that's a great tip too. Know the builds. Know builds that usually run XLs. XL check them. It's the greatest way to get kills. So I hope you enjoyed these quick tips to make you a better mech warrior and Mechwarrior Online. Like I said, I didn't necessarily talk about loadouts. I really didn't even talk about the meta in general. These tips will work on any build. Whether you run LRMs, you run lore-esh builds, you run builds that you like. Front load that armor, knowing your positioning, knowing where your weapons are, using all your armor so you torso twist, knowing which side your weapons are on, so if most of the weapons on your left side. All those things will make you stay alive longer. And what does that do? Well, that makes you more C builds because your match score goes up and hopefully your KDR goes up too, as well as your tier. So if you're not in tier 1 now, you can join a lot of us here in tier 1 because eventually you will get there. So anyway, have a good night. I'll probably make another video next week and I'll see you on the game grid.